afternoon. Welcome to the Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board meeting. Today is June 20th, 2019. Welcome everybody and welcome to summer. So we have no actions to report from closed session. So we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 7 is adoption of the agenda as presented or amended. Do we have movement? Okay, second?
Second.
You guys know we do this often.
Yes.
All right, passes, oh, I'm sorry. We're going to take a vote now. Take a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 3-0. Okay, and item number 8, student staff community recognition. So we have a big one here today, adopting the resolution number 10-19, recognizing retiring district superintendent Jane Youssef for her service to the district. This is a big one and an important one. It's so bittersweet to see Jane off to what promises to be not a boring retirement by no stretch, and I'm sure going to be joyful and gratifying and satisfying in so many new and different ways. But I don't think words can put into how grateful we are, Jane, for all the years of service that you put in not only to this school district but to kids at Redwood City before you came here. And the impact that you've had has been so tremendous that we would like to recognize you by passing a formal resolution here today. So everyone's seen the draft. So are there any questions, or do we have a movement to approve, a motion to approve the resolution? A second, okay. And do we have any comments or questions before we go to roll call vote? Let's go to roll call vote. Start from my right. Aye. Aye. Passes 3-1. 3-0.
There's
still one. 3-0. I keep wanting to say +1, but we don't even have the +1 today because obviously it's summer. So passes 3-0. And so I just want to take a minute now. This is probably not a surprise, but we have it framed for you, Jane. And I think this is the right process and procedure. And we gave you a personal gift previously, but we also have an additional book for you, signed with some photos. And so I just want to come here and present to you, Jane, the resolution signed from the board. It's all available online.
Do you have the baby filter?
No respect, even at the editing. It's my last board meeting.
And I think it's worth following read because it does speak to Jane's amazing contributions, both in terms of tangible results around mental health and other innovative programs that she put into place, setting a culture of continuous improvement and innovation in our community and always striving for the best for every kid. And I think to me in my heart will always stick what you've repeated, Jane, pretty much all the time, all throughout the time that we've known each other, which is really why we're here, and it's to help kids make their dreams come true, whatever those dreams are, and whoever those kids are, all of them and all their dreams. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I guess this is the right process. Hopefully I won't get in trouble for doing it this way, but we have a couple additional folks who are here tonight to also present Jane with honors as well. So if I may invite folks from State Senator Jerry Hill's office to come to the podium. First, and we have more.
Good evening. My name is Joan Dentler. I'm a field representative in State Senator Jerry Hill's office.
Hi, my name is Isabel LaSalle, and I'm a field representative for Assemblymember Mark Berman.
And it's rather bittersweet, as we all know, that we're here this evening to honor one of our, I don't think we play favorites in our world, but we certainly have a true affinity for Cabrillo and especially for Superintendent Jane Euster and all that she's done in working with us as state legislative representatives and with our bosses Senator Hill, Assemblymember Mullen, and Assemblymember Mullen's representative was supposed to have been here this evening, Mario Rondon, so we do present this on behalf of all three of us. And when I say that, a big part of our jobs and our bosses' jobs really is education, and as you know, 40% of the budget of the state of California, and with the governor's new budget, I want to say it's up to closer to 45%, goes to public education, and even with that, we know it's still not enough, but it does make what our school districts do and our administrators do is so important to guide our legislative bosses to what they do in Sacramento. And someone who is as proactive and advocates for her students and her staff like Jane really stand out in our mind, and it has been a pleasure to work with you. When we needed a facility recently to hold a big co-site event, Jane didn't even skip a beat and offered the wonderful facility at Half Moon Bay High School, and the staff and the services that went along with it, and the Senator Hill really truly appreciates it. And it's been wonderful to work with you. We will miss you, but we've read the bio of the new superintendent coming in, and it's very impressive, and we're sure he'll fill your shoes well. So I will not read this entire resolution, but I'll read a little bit of it in a moment, but I think Isabel has something that she'd like to add.
Thank you, Joan. Superintendent Euster, I'm honored to be here today to present you with this resolution upon your retirement. Our office has been incredibly fortunate to have worked with you over the last few years and to have had your support for a number of our bills, including establishing just recently the Office of School-Based Health, a bill which you helped us get passed through the Assembly floor. Now it's moving to the Senate. Thank you for your help with that. Your contributions reach far beyond the 3,200 students Cabrillo Unified currently serves. You built a legacy of expanding mental health services for students, faculty, staff, and parents. Your high level of engagement at the local and state level can also be seen through your creation of the State of the District Update and the Superintendent's Parent Advisory Committee. In the name of brevity, I will leave the rest of your accomplishments to my colleagues and to your colleagues, and we'll finish with this. You have been a strong voice for the co-side, and I wish you a lovely retirement.
So I will just read the last paragraph. Whereas Jane Euster has directed the path of the CUSD toward its current level of distinction among other school districts throughout California, and she is highly respected and valued for her commitment to excellence and to the district's students. Now, therefore, be it resolved by Senator Jerry Hill and Assembly members Mark Berman and Kevin Mullen that they take great pleasure in commending Jane Euster for her visionary role as superintendent in guiding the development of Cabrillo Unified School District to its current prominence, and extend to her sincere best wishes for all the richness and rewards of an active and productive retirement.
Special guest. I'll welcome to the podium from the County Board of Education, Ms. Susan Alvaro.
Hi there.
Hi there.
So I'm in my official capacity this evening, Jane. I have a resolution from the County Board of Education and the County Superintendent of Schools for you with a lot of whereases, but I want to say a couple of personal things first before I get started. First time I met Jane, I went to the groundbreaking of the Boys and Girls Club Cunha gym, and I bumped into my old friend John Nazar, who had come back to be, thank God, the principal of Half Moon Bay High School, and he said, "You have to meet somebody, you have to meet somebody. This is our new superintendent, she's awesome." And I thought, well, with a recommendation like that, I'm solid, right? And then, shortly thereafter, I came to an education committee meeting that you always attend, and you were talking about some very high-risk students, very needy students in the district, and you actually began to weep talking about them. And I thought, any superintendent who cares that much about her students that she weeps in a public meeting is okay by me. And obviously we've had a lot of chances to work together since, and I treasure all of them. I'm very grateful for all the things we've been able to do together. So we have a little whereases here that I'm not going to read. A couple of interesting ones that I have heard you talk about, that you actually spent 20 years in the corporate world, and then you decided to become a teacher, which is excellent. Some of the whereases here, there's one that's really important to me, which is, whereas Ms. Euster strengthened the connection between the district and the community, which led to the completion of several bond construction projects and the passage of a bond measure for future modernization and improvements. Now, what that doesn't say is all the other things that came out of you strengthening the bond with this community. I would put a whereas in pencil myself, which is that whereas I have been a parent on this coast for 30 years, raised my son, he went through your school districts. I have worked with a lot of superintendents. I was executive director of the Coastside Collaborative and really worked closely with a number of superintendents. And I would say, whereas Ms. Euster is the best superintendent I've known in Cabrillo District. Now therefore, be it resolved, the San Mateo County Board of Education hereby honors Jane Euster's impact on public education for all of San Mateo County and wishes her the very best in her retirement. Jane? There you go.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan and team. All right, and we also have a green sheet related to this item. Another surprise guest in the audience, also wearing a green shirt. I wanted to just make her sweat. I wanted to make her sweat a little bit. So I saved you for last, Sean.
Well, I just wanted to thank Jane personally for her work for the district and her collaboration with the union. And I'm no longer a union person, so I did it for public comments. Thanks, Jane.
Okay, so at this point, we will take a 15-minute recess. Or could you say something? Okay, good. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay,
You're
so-
trying to get a superintendent not to say anything?
Woo! Jane, please welcome to the podium. Then cake, so you're between.
Okay, I'll keep this brief because I don't want to cause people not to have cake. So I've said this before. I thank you very much for all the things, but it's not about me. It's about Cabrillo. And every person, that's why I kept staring at Sean, I'm staring at the administrators, I'm staring at the parents. This is Cabrillo Unified. And this is what drives this district forward. I simply had the great pleasure to be in the middle of it all for a while. This community is so active, it's so engaged, that when you have an idea and you have something take place, you turn to it and it always says yes. You turn to the faculty of this, how about we try, yes. You can't lose when that's here. It is the weapon, the secret weapon, and not so secret anymore because I've bragged shamelessly about it. That's how our high school is ranked 2nd or 3rd in the entire county. That's right, Half Moon Bay High School ranks up with Aragon and all the fancy high schools across the hill. Yes, we have challenges. Yeah, we don't have the same, but we produce results. And that's what counts. We value our students, and that's what counts. And we always put them first. So, we do what we have to. Thank you to Senator Hill. Thank you to the representatives. They have always listened. They've put up with my, hey, don't forget we're over here on the coast. We need some stuff. Always with great cooperation, fabulous. And we've lured them in with our coastside activism. Congratulations to our parents, so very active now. It's great to see. They know who we are. That's the way it should be. This is an outstanding school district producing incredible students, And every last one of you, thank you for making kids' dreams come true. Thank you very much.
So now to celebrate Jane, we will take a 15-minute or so recess, or 30 minutes. I don't know typically how much we need. 15 minutes. Okay, so we'll take a 15-minute recess. Please join us in the room across the hall for some cake and coffee. So I need to bang a gavel to go to recess, in case I. Alright. So we'll reconvene at this time, the Unified Governing Board meeting, June 20th. We're up to item number 9. Microphone. Comments from the public related to items not on this agenda. So we have one item from Jane Easter.
So I would like to ask Joy Dardanelle if she would take care of this item for us, please.
Good evening, Board President Sophia Lane, members of the board who are present today, Senior Cabinet Superintendent Euster. It's my pleasure today to get to introduce to you what people refer to as the new me, although I would call myself the former Leticia, in that I met Dr. Leticia Bhatia about 6 years ago, and I will tell you the story about why I'm sharing this with you tonight. We were at a California School Board Association meeting about facing history, and the focus on it was equity. And I remember her so clearly from that evening 6 years ago when I was a principal at Farallon View, and she was in a different role in South San Francisco Unified, because she was a person who really believed so much in equity, incredibly knowledgeable, passionate about public education, and more than anything, I also noticed that she had just a really warm heart. And we've had the opportunity to cross paths many times in our work in curriculum. And I found out recently that she is going to be the new Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction at Cabrillo Unified School District. And when I found that out, I was overjoyed for many reasons, but because of who she is, who I've known her to be, but also because of the things I know that she will accomplish here at Cabrillo Unified. And as much as I'm moving on, I will be still supporting the district in my role at the county, and I'll be around as a parent as well, lurking around, checking on everything. And it's my pleasure to actually introduce to you Dr. Leticia Bhatia, the new Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction of Cabrillo Unified School District.
I'm a hugger. Good evening, President Lane, Governing Board, Superintendent Euster, members of the Cabinet, Ms. Acosta, and community. It is a true honor to stand here and humbly serve as your next Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction. As you have seen in my resume, I really grow roots in all of my different positions. I have worked at 2 different districts and have stayed there a range of 6 to 7 years, so I hope to continue a minimum of that many years, if not more. Cabrillo is very special to me, as Assistant Superintendent Dardanelle mentioned. Superintendent Euster, we've worked on many projects, being having K through 12 experience in South San Francisco. And my goal is really to ensure that we continue to support the amazing work that our Superintendent Euster, Assistant Superintendent Dardanelle, and the staff, the students, the parents, the board have done. And I know I have some big shoes to fill, and I'm just, again, very blessed that our joy is going to be just at the county office, and we'll continue to support and guide our work as we continue to support the amazing students, families, and community of Cabrillo Unified School District. So thank you so much for allowing me to join the community and your family. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy, for the introduction, and welcome, Leticia. We're really thrilled to have you here with us. Okay, seeing as there are no other comments from the public related to items not on this agenda, we we will proceed to item number 10, representative reports. So starting with CUTA. I saw Ramon, but maybe not. Who's here?
He's in a cake coma.
Okay, he's not here? Okay. CSEA? You don't think I see CSEA either? Okay. Summer is here. Okay, so progressing to item 11, reports, information, and presentations. 11A, receive an overview by Tbis strategies, TBWPH strategies, on the process to assess the feasibility to pursue a renewal of the existing parcel tax.
Good evening, President Lane and members of the board and staff. Thank you for having us. Congratulations to Jane as you move on. We're excited for you and grateful for the many years that you have served public education. You have a gift for helping mold and change communities, and we wish you the best. Joining me tonight is Sarah Labatt and Megan Simpson from EMC Research, and Sarah's going to walk you through our polling results of the tracking poll that we just did about the feasibility of renewing your parcel tax, which we definitely know is needed and a desire. So I'm going to turn this over to Sarah, and we'll circle around with a discussion when she's finished. Okay?
Thank you, Robin. Good evening, board. And I was very honored to be here as Jane leaves the room for her, oh, there we go, for her, for that tribute. I've worked with this district a number of times over the years. It's nice to see you all again. And it's just an honor to be here when hearing so many beautiful things about a superintendent. It warms my heart, and I love it. Okay, I'm going to full screen this so it makes it a little bit easier to see. There we go. My name is Sarah Labatt. I'm a principal with EMC Research. My colleague Jessica is out of state this week, and so I'm covering for her. I've been involved in a lot of the polling that we've done here at Cabrillo in the past, so I'm happy to be here. And Megan, who really did all the hard work, is here from our Columbus, Ohio office, just for you to be here for this presentation and help if there are questions about the data. So I'll run through and then bring Robin back up for questions and discussion. As you know, we did an opinion survey. It was a mixed mode survey of likely voters in the Cabrillo Unified School District. There were a number of modes we used, telephone as well as online, and we drove them to that online survey both via email as well as text message invitations, so really bringing in a number of modes to conduct the survey. It was conducted May 14th through 24th, so just wrapped up a few weeks ago. We did 400 interviews here in the district. So the margin of error as you look at the data in this survey is about 5 percentage points. So sort of any number we show, think of a little bracket around that that goes 5 points plus or minus. And that represents, if we could talk to every single voter in the district, what we think we would hear. We also used a split sample methodology in this survey to understand reaction to two potential different parcel tax amounts. So the way that works is we take the entire sample, which is a representative random sample of voters in the district. We split it right in half. So we have two independent representative random samples of voters in the district. Half of them heard a renewal only with no increase for $150 for your parcel tax. So 200 heard that version of the ballot question. So a margin of error of about 7 points. On that, and then the other half heard the 197 renewal plus increase. So half heard the stay the same, just renew it, extend the term. The other half heard a combination of extending the term as well as increasing by another $47. 200 people heard that. So again, separate samples, sort of an independent test of what would be the reaction in the district if you went forward with one or the other model. And the reason we do it this way is because on the ballot, you don't get to ask, well, if you don't want that, how about this, right? You get one chance. And so we wanted to make sure we were really being scientific about evaluating these two options. As many of you know, we've been doing polling in this district, I think since 2005. Here we're showing some of the past polling we've done on a parcel tax measure. So you can see similar methodologies for our prior work here. So big picture, what have we found? Sorry, I'll try not to do that again. What did we find? And then we'll go through the data here that supports this. First of all, we are seeing a little bit of an improvement in the opinion environment since the last poll, which came pretty quickly on the heels of your bond measure in June 2016, or June 2018, excuse me. And I know there were some indicators in that poll that sort of said there's a little bit of maybe negativity around the district that might be coming off of that somewhat contentious issue. And we do see a little bit of an improvement as the time passes since that time. Pessimism is a little bit down, perception of need for schools is a little bit up, perception of the district's financial management has improved as well. So we do see some positive indicators there. We see that support for a straight renewal of your parcel tax has increased since the poll that we did last year. Solid support for that straight renewal at $150 just reaches that required 2/3 threshold, and solid support for the renewal plus increase is just below. As you know, in this district, passing a parcel tax measure in any district is difficult. Certainly we want to really think hard about what we're seeing here, and we'll show you this data, but we see sort of slightly more support for the straight renewal than the renewal plus an increase. There's a lot of reasons voters give us for supporting the measure. Concerns about financial management, this feeling of being overtaxed are mentioned as sort of the primary reasons for voting against it. This is pretty consistent with what we see in surveys about education as well as lots of other topics in this area, as well as many other areas in the general Bay Area, as well as all over the state, that there is this sort of concern about government spending. I think as you get to this local level, they value the school district, they trust the school district, and we'll see those numbers. But there's still going to be this flavor, and you've seen it in your past measures, and we'll see it here, of just some concern about taxing in general, as well as financial management. So we'll show those numbers as well. Okay, this mouse just moves by itself. It's gravity. Are things going in the right direction here on the coast side, or going off on the wrong track? As I said, we've been polling in this district since 2005, so we have a lot of good, robust data here. The blue line at the top is right direction, the red, wrong track. So as you remember, when we were here back in September of 2018, that wrong track number had sort of edged up post-election. The right direction number had been sort of stable in the 40s since 2017. So we see that right direction number kind of staying the same, wrong track's going down, which is good news. Certainly people are getting a little bit more optimistic as we move away from that election, right? This was specifically asked about how things are going on the coast side, not specifically about education, right? This is a general sort of opinion environment kind of question. Would you say the schools have a great, in the Cabrillo Unified School District, have a need for money? So great need, some need, a little need, or no real need. And we do see perception of need for funding has increased. So the current number is there at the top. 43% said they believe the district has a great need for funding. Another 26% says some need. Those are up from 35 and 27 in the prior survey back in September. And you can see that no need number has dropped from 19 to 13. So certainly looking at this as you approached and went through your bond election, we sort of saw that, after that election, that sort of perception of need shrank as you went to the voters and approved a bond measure. But now it's been a little bit more time. They're looking at the kinds of things that a parcel tax needs to do. And we certainly see that there's awareness of need, which is certainly something you want to see if you're entering a period of time where you're going to ask the voters to either renew or increase a measure. We also want to look closely at the parent community. We have about 17% of the parents, of the voters in this district that are current parents in the district, and we do see a lot of intensity of need there. 69% of parents believe the district has a great need for funding, another 21% some need. So certainly thinking about if you decide to move forward with a measure, whichever type of measure you do, or whichever level you do, you want to have those parents enthusiastic and really understanding why you're asking, and it's clear to me that parents are very engaged, as you mentioned earlier. Some questions about the ratings of the district. We've been tracking these over time. The overall rating, so this is, do you feel the Cabrillo Unified School District is doing an excellent, good, only, fair, or poor job? In general, very consistent over time. Just under 50% say excellent or good, about 35% only, fair, or poor. A little bit down from the prior poll, just a skosh, and I think as we look at sort of all of the bulk of this data, we see just those slight improvements that are all kind of trending in that same direction. Also ratings of the quality of teachers and the quality of education, very consistent over time, and in fact the quality of the teachers' ratings has sort of gradually been growing over time back since 2017. and some other district ratings, the safety of schools and grounds, right? We saw that the negative rating on that a little bit higher back in September, pretty immediately after your bond measure, which is obviously about facilities and grounds, and we see some of that here, as well as the quality of the school facilities in the district. We do continue to see some concerns about financial management, but those are sort of softening. In the September survey, you saw about 55% felt that the district's financial management, they rated it as only fair or poor. That's come down to about 45% now. You see the positive rating increasing. And we see that don't know column pretty consistently around a third. Really we want to continue to move that trust number, that belief in positive financial management number up. I would also say, and I'm sure most of you have heard this, it's very hard to get a really positive number in financial management for a government agency. So some of what we see here, we see this in a lot of districts and other public agencies where a lot of people don't know. And a lot of that, the numbers in the positive and negative are really more in the somewhat, sort of the good and the fair, as opposed to the extreme excellent or poor. So certainly going in the right direction here in terms of financial management. So now talking about the measure, quick reminder. So this poll that we did here was a very short snapshot just to sort of track some of the data we already had learned in the prior poll, as we've been showing you. But we wanted to, before we show the current measure as we tested in this poll and the result from this poll, we wanted to remind you what you saw back in 2018. So remember, we tested a measure, we gave some information, we asked the vote again, we gave some information in opposition, we asked the vote a third time. And really what we're trying to learn from this is, what happens when you give additional information? Are people changing their minds? Are they changing their opinions? So what we saw in 2018, right, is that the support for the measure, remember you need 2/3 to pass, right, 66.67, et cetera. And support, the solid support before you add in the leans for that, for this measure, this was renewal only, when we tested it in 2018 was 61%, a couple of points of leans, but still short of that 2/3 threshold. When you add, give them more information about why the district is putting something on the ballot, or potentially putting something on the ballot, we do see some increase in the support, up to 66% solid for the renewal, another 3 points lean yes, and that no level comes down a little bit below that 1/3, that critical 1/3 to defeat it. And then after opposition information, so sort of simulating what might happen in a campaign environment, if somebody comes out and has some negative things to say about a measure, what happens? And we do see that that vote does drop back down. And to us, this says there is a kind of piece of these voters that are moving with information, they're learning something, they're reacting to it. Their opinion, right on that margin has a little bit of elasticity. And so we certainly want to be aware of that coming in. And so this was the last poll back in 2018. And the current poll, and I'm sorry that words are so small, but hopefully you have them in front of you. But the left side is the renewal only for $150. The right side is the increase, the renewal plus increase, so $197. So remember, about half are in each. The margin of error is about 7 points. So what we see is the solid support for renewal only is at 68% solid yes. So before if anyone said undecided, they're not in that solid yes. If they said undecided, then we said, well, do you lean yes or no? Or they got a prompt on their screen if they took it online about leaning yes or no. Another 1 point lean towards the yes side. On the no side for the renewal, 27% solid no, another 1 point lean no, just 2% undecided. So a very, very small group of people that aren't able to at least show some direction. On the renewal plus the increase on the right side, the solid yes vote 64%, another 2 points of lean yeses, and then on the no side, the solid no at 32%, very close to that 1/3 threshold, another 1 point leaning no, and 1% undecided. There are margins of error to consider, but certainly looking at these two and reflecting back to the prior polling, we're seeing a little bit of movement, right? What we tested in the prior poll was what's here on the left, and you started at 61 and were able to grow it with information. In this case, it's a very short poll. We didn't give information, but we do know, right, we're seeing some movement since the last poll. We've also seen a lot of those sort of negative, pessimistic indicators come down. This is what we would expect to see in a poll like this after that time has passed. We asked them why they would vote yes or no. It was an open-ended question, and they could give any response they wanted. We coded these, rolled them up into codes that sort of grouped them by like responses. Why do they support a measure if they voted yes? Schools are underfunded, education should be a priority. I support education, sort of general responses like that. On the opposition side, we see sort of a twofer. One is sort of the trust government mismanagement perception, and the other is I'm already paying too much in taxes. We can't sort of afford it. So, I think it's sort of it's what I would expect to see in a poll about a revenue measure. Certainly knowing that on the opposition side, there's concern about the amount as one of their concerns, is one that I think we need to make sure we're taking very seriously as you consider how to move forward. And then finally, I just wanted to show you, this is sort of a historical slide. We've done a lot of polling here, and you've had a lot of elections here, so just a quick orientation to this chart. The purple are the poll results. So every time we've done a poll, that bar is represented in purple. The blue are elections that have passed. So you can see back in 2010, $150 parcel tax. In 2012, an $81 million bond. In 2014, $150 parcel tax. And then in 2018, a $99 million bond. And you can see the one failed election back in 2006 for $175 parcel tax. So, looking at the sort of totality of the line, a few notes I want to make sure we're pointing out, right? It's not easy to get 2/3 in this community. Obviously, a bond, you don't need 2/3. So, we're really looking at the comparison of the elections against the 55% line for the bonds and the 67% line for the parcel taxes, and you can see they've all been tight elections. You don't have a huge population here. It doesn't take a lot of voters to swing the vote to yes, to success or failure. So you've been extremely precise. You've done a great job of motivating your parents and your communities. You've had a superintendent. That's been a big piece of this. But I think we want to remember that it's not easy to get to 2/3, and so making sure you're considering that as you consider how to move forward and keep the funding source you have now as you consider how to move forward with a parcel tax measure. With that, I'm happy to take questions about the polling, or if there's questions or discussion, I can bring Robin back up as well.
Great, thank you so much. Just three of us today, so shouldn't be too much of a debate. Do you guys have any questions you want to start with? Comments? Go ahead.
First off, I was just so happy to see an increase in number for a straight renewal. It was very devastating last year to get a number that was that low and to feel like we would potentially lose that $1.6 million a year, which is what keeps our class sizes small, keeps all of our schools open, keeps, really funds some essential part of what we have. And so that was really hard. So it was really great to see the better numbers here. Thank you for that work. Really appreciate it.
So I'm a little bit less familiar with the data, so I have a couple questions and comments, and just to say it is encouraging, and I think it's interesting, so a lot has happened since fall of 2018, both in terms of our local activities and the awareness, I think, that both the district and our families through the co-siders for better education funding have done to raise the awareness and deepen the understanding of how school finance works, and I'll give Crystal a tremendous amount of credit for that too, and what the implications of state infrastructure is on our local schools. I think that's obviously a big part of it locally. Time is a big part of it locally, where bond campaign is a little less fresh in people's minds for sure. And just the broader state and national environment in terms of just, it's more on the radar, right? We have teachers protesting in Oakland just across the bay. So I think, although it's been a horrible thing that has come to that in public education, California, I think that has potentially influenced things as well. So I think it is encouraging to see that the numbers have gone up since the fall. I also thought it was interesting on your last slide, slide 17, I just noticed that for each of the previous parcel tax elections, we had a polling at about 68%, 66%, and it jumped up to 71%. So that to me also, which is contrasts with the bond measures, says maybe there's a little bit more influence through the process on a parcel tax, which is.
Yeah, just real quick, just to explain, the parcel tax campaign is a very different campaign from the bond. I know you haven't been involved in them before, but
Well,
just.
regardless of what it is.
Well, no, just to
the
explain that
numbers
difference.
The numbers go up and the bond numbers go down.
Right, yeah,
Which is
so,
cool.
yes, because you're voting for teachers, you're voting for
Yeah.
salaries, you're voting, that's
Yeah.
where the money can only be spent on teachers' salaries, not administrators and not buildings. So it makes a huge difference for a bond campaign versus a parcel tax campaign, just because you haven't been involved in any
Well,
of those
yeah,
before.
but as a
Yeah.
voter, I don't need to be involved in a campaign to know, to just, I mean, I'm
No,
just
no,
looking
I
at the
know.
numbers.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
looking at the numbers,
Yeah.
the point is they go up. For the parcel taxes, they
I'm
go down.
explaining
the
why.
bond.
I've got one
Why they
comment
go
about
up.
this too, and when I worked on that parcel tax, that 71%, I wish I could put the number of votes, but it still wasn't very many votes that we won by. Even though it looks bigger there, I mean, do you guys have that? You probably don't. It was not, I don't know, it was like 40 votes or
Yeah, it's still
30
around.
votes. I
We'll
mean,
try to pull that up.
It
while
wasn't
you're
very-
discussing.
Right.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, but
wasn't, it
my
still
point
wasn't
is
very
My point is
many
the
votes.
polling,
And-
it's better than the polling versus the bond is worse than the
Right.
polling.
Well, we also have to remember the margin of error, right?
Right.
Is in that too.
Sophie, I think your point is very well taken, and I agree with that. It is typically the campaign, the need of a campaign for a parcel tax is exponential to that of a bond measure. And as Jane alluded to earlier, your community comes together in that need, and we expect that again, right? And it's a good feeling, and you're right to point that out. That's great.
Just looking at the numbers, I think that's interesting. I had some other questions.
Can we go back to the slide with the two measures, the current poll? The one difference that should be noted for the tracking poll, which when we had the feasibility committee met to talk about doing the tracking poll, the difference from September 2018 to now is it was reduced from 12 years to an 8-year longevity. And so I think that also we felt, as some of the numbers are here, felt that was a more
Palatable.
yes, and not a forever, right? And to give the voters more ownership of, I can change this down the road and it's not too far away that I have a say again. So I think that's another poll. We were happy with those numbers at that 8-year. Took us a while to get there, but we did.
And given a little bit more optimism that something might actually happen at the state level to fix things properly,
Right.
although we presume it's gonna still take a good amount of time, I think that rationale makes a lot of sense in terms of trade-offs, in terms of certainty over the longevity to a little bit more palatable, a time frame. I did notice one difference too between the A and the B in the language, and I don't know if this was intentional or if there's a reason for it, where in A, we included exemptions for people with disabilities, but B, we did not. Was that by design, or?
I can speak to that. The difference in B, and when we speak to the increase, we actually, both of them can only be 75 words, which is very tricky to get to 75 words and state your question. And in B, when we talk about the increase, we actually state the increase, which is what bond counsel recommended. And so then you have to give up a couple of words from A, I guess. And those were you don't want to say you can give that up, because I know that that's important. All of that will be in talking points and messaging that would go on any communication going out.
Okay, so
To
that would be in
include
the
that
body.
Yes,
Okay,
it would be
just make sure.
included.
So then, I think you had this, well, I guess it's in the alluded to in the text itself in terms of the total revenues generated under these two scenarios. One would be 1.6 million, one would be 2.1 million, which I just want to be, really clear. Of course, that will cover just a small portion of the budget gaps that we're forecasting for even 2020-21, which is about 3 million plus or minus. So we're looking at still with scenario A, a budget gap of 1.4 million, which assuming we don't get a lot of rapid implementation of any fixes at the state level, which is probably a safe assumption, at least for the first couple of years, would mean we'd still have pretty significant gaps. We'd have to make pretty significant cuts. And unless anything from the state comes through in a big way, even over the next 5 to 8 years, could mean that we're looking at another parcel tax layered on top of this at some point down the road. So is that something that came up in your discussions as well? Obviously not in the polling, but
Right,
in terms of the
right.
strategy
And
around
our-
looking at these two numbers.
Yes, in the committee, a couple of committee meetings that we had, yes, that did come up. And I think the conversation was by stretching this to 8 years, that should it be necessary, that you could move forward with a supplemental tax, if that seemed to be the case. We didn't want to put that in writing and say that that's a we're gonna do, because we don't know we don't have that crystal ball, which I wish we did. All of our lives would be so much better if we had the crystal ball, to know where will the state be in 4 years or 5 years from, to support public education, certainly.
I have a quick answer to the question raised earlier about how many votes the 2014 parcel tax passed by. It was less than 300 votes, so it's a small, that's a small margin.
Bigger than the bond, which was fine.
Yes. Yes.
Which is fine. This is a small town. Oh, and you mentioned that 17% of voters are parents on one of the slides. Does that mean that historically 17% of the voters are parents, or does that mean eligible voters or registered
It's
voters? Like, what's
likely
your-
March 2019 voters, and it's been
Okay.
pretty consistent over all the polling we've done. It's ranged in the 15, 16, 17, 18% range, and it's pretty typical for a school district in California. I actually think that's a great question. What we see a lot is, that means over 80% of the voters in your district don't have children in the district. Some of them might have had children in the district in the past, but there are a lot of voters that live in this community that don't engage with the school district on any basis, and I think one of the jobs of research is really to bring the voice of every voter to you, beyond the voters you might hear from as school board members. So I think it's a great question, because it's an excellent reminder that there are a lot, 4 out of 5 voters in this district don't have children in your schools. And they all get to vote.
And you showed the progression for the 2018 poll, but not the 2019, so you didn't do that
It was just a
testing.
tracking poll, so it didn't have all the full.
Yeah.
Right, that's right.
But I think the assumption is that with the renewal, you get less opposition.
One of the assumptions is that with a renewal, you get less opposition because you're not actually increasing taxes. And so then that would decrease that after opposition, hopefully.
And it was legal counsel that advised to mention that it's an increase from, I think at
So
some
there are
early point in the conversations, I think there was some suggestion, maybe we don't need to mention it's an increase and just say we renew it at 197 or whatever. So maybe tell us a little bit where that came from.
Sure, I can speak to that. In conversation with Janet Mueller, your bond counsel, and knowing what we know about the community here, and wanting, and your desire to be transparent, it is better to be upfront and state the case of what's true, what's happening, than to try to slip one under the rug, if you will. And that's where we want.
So it's a little bit more of like a strategic thing than a legal thing per se.
And I'm just alluding that we had a discussion about it.
Yeah.
I think it's very important that, should the board choose to move forward, continued communication to your community through your parents and the greater community at large, and being transparent as a board is important about the district finances, regardless that this gap isn't going to be closed 100%. And so there will be, two messages being delivered concurrently, right? Because it'll be next fall that you'll need to start having those conversations about, I was just shaking my head, yes, Robin, that you'll need to make decisions about what will need to be cut that following year. And at the same time, that's going to be a district communication, and your independent advocacy campaign will be sharing the information about the parcel tax. And so So again, both are necessary, and it's, it just needs to go parallel, and the district can only speak to information, right? And your advocacy group will speak to the piece about the campaign, and when they get questions, we'll direct people back to the board, the website, the district, to be able to answer those fiscal questions. Important to have both.
I just want to reiterate that. I think we kind of really discovered that with our bond campaign, how important it is to have a bond message, but also the district is really clear about funds and where things are going, and that those are kind of two separate roles. Just real quick on the language, my understanding is that the language for parcel tax and bonds has to be more specific now than it was the last time we passed the parcel tax as well, though. That the actual requirement for the language has changed, and that's one of the reasons why there's more details now. That's true. Yes, so that was why our bond language was also more specific, and we changed it midway, and that applies to parcel tax language as well, so that's why you get the different numbers up there.
Well, and I guess this effort in terms of thinking about additional revenue streams coming in relates very much to the effort that we've had with the Financial Advisory Committee in terms of cost reductions moving forward, potential cost reductions moving forward. We have a financial planning special board meeting scheduled for August 5th, I believe it is. And I don't know our timing for sharing with the board the recommendations from that Financial Advisory Committee, if it would be that date or beforehand, but it's probably something we should figure out sooner rather than later, because I think at some point that's the visions that we have this discussion around. So what are the, the bigger picture? So we make decisions in the broader context of, so what does this actually mean? What are we looking at moving forward? So I guess we'll just follow up, maybe Crystal, and figure out like when we're gonna bring in that information from the Financial Advisory Committee to the board.
Just real quick on the date, the August 5th date. So if we are going to move forward with the parcel tax renewal, we have to file it by August 9th, which is a Friday, and our board meeting is the day before. And it's my understanding that our legal counsel is concerned about that timeline. So in our committee, we'll just actually in conversation prior with TBWB, we were suggesting that maybe we have the actual parcel tax discussion at the same time as the financial discussion and vote on the parcel tax at that time.
At the August 5th
Yeah.
financial planning meeting.
So that we have the time to then file whichever parcel tax we choose to file at that time.
Yeah, otherwise we're cutting it a little close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's some signatures that have to be gotten, and if people are out on that Friday, then we don't file, we miss it
Or
completely.
schedule.
Then we for sure are cutting, because we're down 1.6 million. This is this isn't adding any money to our district budget. This is taking $1.6 million away, and that money is currently used to keep class sizes small in K-3 and all sorts of other wonderful things. So,
So we can follow up and see, if we want to plan for the vote to be then at that August 4th. And I assume it does not need to be at a regular board meeting. So sometimes certain things do. But it's just something we'll have to, it can be a special board meeting. Yeah, we just double check that part, because we also have the
I think as long as you
potentially-
post it, what you're doing.
Yeah,
you know.
because I know some things need to be in a regular board meeting.
Because, okay, well, we'll
So let's check, because the other option is moving it up to Wednesday, the regular board meeting. Yeah.
Okay,
So
then we
let's-
just change the date of the regular board meeting?
So if we can could we just maybe verify that, and
Yeah,
then
I
let us
will.
know, and if, just
I
let
will.
Jane and I know, and then if it needs to be a regular board meeting, we could potentially look into pushing it up on that Wednesday, and still have the special board meeting on Tuesday, and if there's flexibility, we can have it on Tuesday. So if we can have that as a follow-up, just let Jane know, and then you can follow up.
I think it will, it gives us all great comfort to know that you're willing to back up and accommodate a couple of days
Oh,
earlier
yeah.
than that August 8th, because that is a very uncomfortable place to be, knowing that we need to get to the county office of
Yeah.
education and get all the signatures to have it filed by 4 o'clock.
Now, that was another initial recommendation that came, and I think we kind of felt like, okay, you guys feel comfortable, but it's better now to have that level of discomfort and to fix it now than later, like August 6th or 7th, we start to get nervous, like, okay,
Right,
that's
it's
not the
just
time.
better to be
So I
proactive
appreciate
with
your
that.
raising that flag now, and we'll just close the loop and figure out what the rules are around regular versus special board meetings and
Sure.
plan accordingly. So,
Any other
Yeah,
questions for us?
that's all the questions for me at this time, I think.
I want to real quick again reiterate how happy I was that the numbers have gone up. As being involved in the last 4 campaigns, 2 parcel tax and 2 bond, it's a lot of work. And we need to renew this. either way. We can't live in this district without this 1.6 million, and so to go into a campaign with those numbers looking down would have been really, really hard and disheartening, I think, for the community. So it's very exciting that we can come back to our community, to our funders and to our parents and say, look, we can do this, we can win this. And I think that with that attitude, with the straight renewal, we can, really make sure that at least some things are maintained in this district, given the financial state from the state. So anyways, I wanted to thank you for your hard work on that. Really appreciate it.
I have one more comment. We, in an earlier meeting with Sophia and with the committees, we talked about some informational messaging documents, and we have those drafted, but have sort of had them on hold to say, are we renewing a straight renewal or renewing with an increase? We can just leave it as considering a parcel tax, renewing a parcel tax, and not add either side to that. But I wanted to get those materials to you in case you were having some meetings or having conversation and you would like to have them accessible. So I'll send those forward, and I actually sent drafts today to Jane and Mary Beth and Freya, but I think we can feel free to move that forward. We also put together a budget 101 infographic that if conversations are happening, just good to have on hand, right? And so those can be shared out. And again, if you have any questions, you know where to find Joy and I, and happy to answer.
Thank you for bringing it up, and I'll say resounding yes, please. I know, I agree at this point, the specifics are not really the issue. It's more the informational, educational value that those kinds of materials can provide to all of us. I think in this meantime, we all have the task of reaching out to the groups that we're liaising with as part of just our general communications as board. So I think those budget 101 type things, and just kind of what is the state, and the materials Crystal has pulled together, like those tangible things help us make sure we're clear on the situation. We can speak accurately and consistently about the broader space. With the details are critical. That's the next phase. That's the advocacy phase. So I appreciate you mentioning that. That'd be tremendously helpful.
And you have some very active, knowledgeable parents that we want to enable them to share the message. So
Yeah.
that's great.
And I will just recognize and probably make her blush back there. Brianna
Yeah,
LaFontaine
she's
is one
awesome.
of them, who
She's awesome.
is super duper awesome, as are Amber, Katie, Jackson, and countless other families, members that somehow with young kids have figured out, and jobs, have figured out how to step up and figure out how all this works, and how to really put together information and communicate with our community in a way that's credible, that's transparent, and really making a difference. So thanks to all you guys too. So I think that's it.
Okay.
So any other questions, comments? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to stay here because our next item, 11B, is to receive the 2019-2020 district and site staff development plans. For that, we'll bring up Joy.
Thanks.
The former Leticia, is that what we call her now?
Good evening. I'm the former Leticia Bhatia. So today I have the pleasure of presenting to you in one of my last efforts in my role as Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, our professional development plan for the 2019-20 school year. Our professional development for the year has 7 days. It starts off with one district-wide day, that's a full day, and across the district we have a school year kickoff, strategic education plan overview, and we're going to be working this year on multi-tiered systems of support, which I will explain in a little bit. That's followed by 6 additional days. They're really 6 sessions rather than days of 2 hours and 40 minutes in 6 different months of the year. We have these divided up in a mixture of district-wide days as well as site-based days in order to provide that cohesiveness necessary for district initiatives, efforts, cohesion, and then also that innovation at the site level. So right now, the first page that you see here is the elementary school plan, and you see that for the district-wide days, we have a focus on multi-tiered systems of support, which actually is more correctly said multi-tiered system of support, in that it's one system that is a catch-all for how we can really effectively meet the needs of all students. Our first day is really looking at an overview of what a multi-tiered system of support is, and then it's followed with looking at a focus on social emotional wellness and support. For the elementary schools, they're going to be doing that in October, and for the secondary schools, they'll be doing that in September. I'll be sharing the secondary plan on the second page. Our next multi-tiered system of support day will be in February, and that's about inclusive practices and accessing content through reading. Now, one of the things that we hear in the local control accountability plan is the need to have inclusive practices for outreach to families, as well as how we serve students. Inclusivity includes how we serve students with disabilities, students with different types of learning challenges, as well as cultural sensitivity and cultural responsiveness. And our last district day for our elementary will be in April, and that's going to be focusing on this concept of universal design for learning. Now, universal design for learning is a specific concept, but the key idea in it is the idea about differentiation. How are we addressing the needs of all students in our classes by understanding, having clear goals, understanding the barriers for individual students, and then also addressing them by providing options for learning, engagement, comprehension, and expression. So when you see the secondary calendar, it's going to look very similar to the elementary calendar. The only difference is that the district-wide days and the site-based days are on different months in order to allow our district-level teams to support elementary, and then the next time supporting secondary. When you look at the work that each site is going to be doing, those are the white lines that you see here. Those days were determined at a site-based level through their leadership teams, academic councils, different types of the site-based leadership. So at Hatch next year, their focus is going to be on the social emotional learning piece. They also are going to be utilizing Kid Power, which we had in some of our schools this year, and then focusing on dyslexia. You're going to hear some of these similar concepts that we've talked about through the different local control accountability plan presentations as we go through this plan. El Granada will be focusing on primary phonics instruction and then also looking at the 3rd through 5th grade grammar conventions and assessment. You can see El Granada's plan as it starts from looking at assessment in September, and then in January moving to lesson design, and then later lesson intervention. So each of the school sites are taking their concepts and then pushing it just a little bit further with each day of targeted focus on their initiative or their innovative projects that they're working on. Farallon View is also similar to Hatch, having a social emotional focus to start with, and that's with mental health supports and the check-in, check-out Prog process. Some of you may be familiar with positive behaviors, interventions, and supports, also known as Pbis. This is the work that they're doing at Farallon View is related to that. Farallon View is then going to be continuing with structured literacy in the primary grades, as well as word study work in the upper grades, similar to the work that El Granada will be doing. And then Kings Mountain is going to be focusing on project-based learning, and their first trimester is going to be, in September they're going to be focusing on planning and unit design for their first trimester lessons, followed by the second trimester, and then the third trimester. So while El Granada is digging into different aspects of grammar conventions and phonics instruction, Kings Mountain will be actually planning more chronologically for different times of the year. On the next slide here, I have the plan for the secondary schools. As you see, September is the district-wide focus with MTSS, with social, emotional, and wellness support. And then in October, Half Moon Bay High will be focusing on drug education and reviewing data about behavior, which is important because we are trying to increase our use of data analysis to help us inform our decisions in interventions as well as instruction. In February, they're going to be having their CPR and AED training. And then in April, they're going to be working on horizontal alignment, looking at grade levels, and then also vertical alignment by departments. Eidos is going to have the theme of restorative justice and education, and each of theirs builds on different areas of restorative justice. Their first site-based session in October will be focusing on planning classes. Their next one will be about community building practices, and then their session in April is focusing on repairing relationships. Cunha is going to be focusing on restorative practices. They are partnering with another organization, and so they're following a session 1, session 2, session 3 format, similar to how Eidos and some of the other schools are taking different concepts and then pushing it forward each year. Having been in this district now and working on these professional development plans for the past 9 years, one of the things I appreciate about the plan for next year is that I feel that it is really well balanced with that district-wide focus, as well as allowing for that initiative and independence at the site level to pursue things that inspire at the site level and will make an impact specific to that site. The site-based days are also a lot more condensed than they have been in the past, where we're seeing multiple themes coming out as being really cohesive. And the multiple tiered system of support concept overall in the district will help be a vehicle in which we can implement our local control accountability plan. Do you have any questions?
Organization? What's the organization that they're working with?
Looking at me and I gotta remember the name.
So that's why I did not say it. And
Okay.
I mean, I know the contact person's name. I generally try not to do free publicity for outside organizations at board meetings, but we do have contacts and we have already been working on that, so.
I had a couple questions. One, this looks great, so I just wanted to know, again, 2 slides, looks so easy and simple, just 2 nice little tables. Obviously, a lot of work involved in providing the summary, so first I want to thank you for that. And it's kind of cool to see that, like, and so I guess one question was, for the elementary schools, do folks feel like the math curriculum implementation is sufficiently well in place that at this point it's kind of a refinement stage and there's no additional training that needs to be done? Was that considered?
So I think that that's a really good question. I think that there are so many needs that we have in our district that one of the things that we have to also capture is where is the current need and the energy from one year to the next. There was a lot of work with the dyslexia committee, as you heard, and one of the big pieces that we're hearing is the need to really focus on how we're meeting the needs of students. When we look at our data in our CAST data, how we look at our math assessments, a lot of the challenges that students have currently with math are linked directly with literacy and how students are able to access content and text. So I think that we do still need to have a continued focus on how we are supporting our classrooms with math. We also see the need to be able to address some of those base concerns that affect math, including dyslexia and literacy, which you can see.
So I guess like big picture context question then is, in addition to these days, through the district-wide days and the site-based days, or afternoons, I guess in many cases, like, can you just briefly describe what are the other opportunities for PD that our teachers in particular have, I guess? I know there's a new teacher training program for one. Collaboration time is, I guess, more specific to the work at hand rather than PD, right? Are there other opportunities for people to learn?
So I think it depends from year to year. A lot of it does depend on funding, and currently we have the low performing student block grant that can allow us to make decisions about what targeted professional development we can offer across the district. Right now we're focusing our low performing student block grant funding to look specifically at literacy. It also helps us to provide supports for math. Right at this moment, next year's focus is on literacy.
So elementary level, that seems like a good summary, like literacy and social emotional supports. And at the high school, and MTSS, the high school, the secondary level, I should say, more social emotional restorative practices, MTSS.
Yes.
obviously less of an emphasis on literacy, one should hope, by the secondary level.
And I think that part of it is that the way that the secondary schools are also structured, they have academic councils, they're based on departments, they're doing other types of work as well. And so that's one of the reasons why I think the balance between having district-wide focus as well as site-based focus allow us to really delve into the needs that the sites identify.
Makes sense. My last question is how do you anticipate, or how have you historically, or how would you expect that the effectiveness of these trainings will be assessed?
So I think that trainings where you actually have repetitive themes, where we come back from one session to another, helps to increase the effectiveness of content development when sessions are linked from prior sessions and we continue to delve deeper and deeper. In that regard, I believe that these plans are making significant strides in comparison to, let's say, how some of the work was in the past, where there was so much site-based or district-wide top-downness or site-based, herding cats, that we didn't have a balance between that. So I think in that regard, this plan is going to be more effective.
Well, just throw out that a lot of, like, in a corporate environment, for example, typically you'd have like a survey afterwards, to at least get the impression of people, and you wouldn't really necessarily know wouldn't exactly know how effective it is, because you won't know until they do it, and then you see the effectiveness and the results, right, to some extent, but at least to know, like, what people thought about it. A simple, consistent survey that we send out after each training is helpful, to just say 5 questions, takes you 5 minutes. How would you rate this? Would you recommend this for somebody else? Like, that at least gives you is a tool that we could use as a temperature check to make sure teachers are happy with the training.
Yes, and these 2 pages that I'm sharing with you are 2 of 9 pages in a worksheet and each site wrote into this worksheet their plan, including how do we follow up on that. So as exit surveys are included within the planning of these.
And then my last comment would be, this is really great, and I think for our families to also be aware of all the training that our teachers are doing, and then to know that what the areas of work are. I would just encourage our school site leaders to also just share that with our families as well. I think a lot of folks will find it super informative. Like, anytime I've told people about the dyslexic committee, it's like people's faces lit up, like, oh wow, that's awesome that we're doing that. Like, it's just, again, shows that we're doing, makes visible a lot of the work that otherwise is happening behind the scenes and is, kind of taken for granted. So I'll just encourage folks to share that with their site committees, communities as well.
Thank you.
So, all right, anything else? No? All right, thank you, Joy. All right, so that brings us to item number 12, discussion items. 12A, discuss construction facilities plan and schedule. Crystal.
Yes, good evening. I think being passed around right now is just construction, not just A, because there's a ton of work going on this summer. Construction bond project schedule for the completion of summer 2019. There are several projects that have already began. They began the very next day after our students got out. One of the major projects is what I would consider to be the Hatch Playground and Blacktop and landscaping. So that is a newer project that the resurfacing and replacement of the Blacktop was not a part of the regular modernization scope for Hatch. That was prior to my time. I don't know why, but it is something that had to be addressed. I mean, they're like, talk about the 101 potholes. So we definitely are addressing that. The second, which is probably should be if I were ranking these in order, biggest completion for this summer is the completion of Building C at Cunha. So the plan is to get staff moved back in towards the end of July, first part of August, so that our students can start the 1920 school year back in that building. They will have
access to their science labs, art rooms, and band rooms. So that is a big achievement that we will have this summer. And then also, to me, equally important, as what has already been discussed, is the Cunha D building roof replacement. So it is definitely not something that can be ignored, that we have some roof challenges in the district, and so we are able to address those. It is also a very large project to complete in a very short amount of time, but again, they started immediately following a school dismissal on that last day of school. Another project that is well underway and as important is the Half Moon Bay High School boiler replacement. For several years, the district and the high school has been plagued with some colder or chillier classrooms and just very complicated and very aged boiler system at the high school. So that will provide some financial energy relief, as well as some financial relief from the significant amount of repairs that have had to be done to our current system, which will obviously be welcomed on the general fund side. And then also for completion this summer is the Half Moon Bay High School football lights. This is a part of the final portion of the track project that was started a couple years. It was kind of taken in phases. This is the last phase for the football lights. They are being replaced with LED lights. This will make us even better neighbors, as the spillage is almost non-existent, as well as also providing some energy savings for some more efficient and directional lighting for the football field and soccer fields. Another very exciting project that is getting underway, we will start to see some movement on it, and is scheduled for completion of March of 2020, is the Hatch Kinder Complex. So that's about 5 classrooms, and I believe that if you go over to the Hatch School, right outside the construction fencing, there's some renderings, which is very exciting to see what will happen and what it will look like. And then in the planning queue for fall of 2019 is the beginning for Farallon View. So these are the next things that are underway. The district is slotted to sell its next set of bonds in 2020. It's extremely important that we do our very best to maintain our current bond rating, which will become more and more difficult as we face these fiscal challenges. Also with our, I think it's important to note that not only our bond rating can possibly be in jeopardy, but also the county Office of Education can prohibit the district from selling bonds if we do not have, they probably will let us sell with a qualified budget, but if we were to have a negative budget, they may make us postpone those sales. So that's definitely important to keep in mind, because our goal is to get these projects rolling as quickly as we can, since costs are obviously, they keep going up. So this is the current schedule. It is the most activity in the 6 years that I've been here, the most summer activity that I have seen, which is very exciting and then a little nerve-wracking. I think my biggest concern is the Blacktop. I think they're like scheduled to finish like 6 o'clock the night before school starts or something. So it's that one makes me a little nervous, but all very exciting, and will really kind of bring light to a lot of the projects and how we're spending our bond dollars.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you, Crystal, for the detailed list. It's exciting to see these things happening, particularly the Cunha C, which Jane loves hearing about. We're also wondering when we're thinking about El Granada in terms of planning. Do we have any date on that? Would that be the fall of 2020, assuming we have that next bond issuance? Is that where?
So El Granada, no, so Farallon View, the planning is for fall of 2019. There is supposed to be, I want to say I don't think there's another bond sale until 2022 after that. I'm thinking it's 20, it may be 21 or 22, depending on what the market is showing at that time. That will really, that and then obviously the money that we recoup from the lawsuit, hopefully with C Building, we'll kind of figure out when we can actually start El Granada. You know, if we can have some firm dates in when we will be receiving the money, the planning process could start, right? Because that usually takes like 2 years. So like, you know, it could be a year for design and meeting with the stakeholders, and then you kind of account for a year in DSA at the state level. So you could technically be doing that and then start construction as soon as you come out. There most likely would be enough money for planning. So I would probably say in another year. Yeah, fall. I would say fall of 20. Yeah, fall of 2020. I think is a good date. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
So when you say planning, does that mean like engaging architect, having community meetings, like more? Because I know there was a community meeting already at Farallon View.
Yes, there was a brief community meeting once Measure M had passed at Farallon View to kind of share what the process is, because this process is very different than building a home. There's a lot more players involved, and you know, you have to start with the choice of the contract mechanism, and then really building the team for the district, and to make sure that we're doing the best with the funds that we've been given. So the planning process can take about a year, a little bit over a year. The more that the district develops standards, the more quickly it goes and the more cost efficient it can be. So my recommendation definitely is, if we are happy with the kinder complex, that would be kind of like the base and kind of the way we move forward. It will speed the process up, because you also can use DSA approved buildings, which will get you through DSA more quickly. And you can control your costs a little bit more efficiently that way.
We still have to get through the coastal development permits. So, I mean, we aren't through when we're through with the division of the state architect. There's two parts to all these. One is the CDPs, as we call them, and then there's the coastal. So I think our timeline is fine, but we haven't yet dealt, it'll be our first time dealing with the county to get, we've dealt with the city to get our CDPs, and you'll be dealing with the county this time, because these are all county properties. But because the schools are pre-existing and they've been there for a long time, hopefully we don't have any big challenges from the county. But you still do have to get through. And sometimes they argue with each other about some of the stuff that we do.
I had one question also about Hatch. You say Hatch Playground and Blacktop. Does that mean the play structures are being changed?
The play structures are not being changed. We added a couple new ones and so forth, but just the Blacktop.
Just the Blacktop. So just the Blacktop. Okay. That's it. Just wanted to know. Those were my questions. If there's anything else, we'll move on. Okay. Thank you very much, Crystal. Super helpful. Okay. Communications. Item 13. We'll start with board members. Freya, do you want to go first?
So I had the pleasure of attending 2 graduations. Thank you, James, for your wonderful speech at Cunha, and got to hand the diploma and give my daughter a hug as well. She, my second one, graduated from Cunha, so that was lovely. Very fast, got everyone out of there in 1 hour. Yeah, very impressed. So good job, James, and so happy that you're the 3rd principal this year and that you'll still be around next year. So that was really fun, and hopefully nobody noticed that one of my pant legs was longer than the other ones, because my hem had broken. I'd had one of those days, and then I got pooped on by the seagulls as I was standing outside, which I guess is a Cunha tradition. So anyways, one of those days. And I had actually driven back from Sacramento that morning. I was very excited to go up there and see the AB 39 pass through the Senate Education Committee. So that was really wonderful to see that done, and I believe it's heading to appropriations now. So crossing our fingers, hoping that those aspirational goals will be set and the the governor can then hopefully next year begin funding schools at the proper level that they need to be funded at. And the next day I got to go to Kings Mountain again, and thank you, Diane, for hosting us. Jason and I were there. It was a little bit hot, but we survived. You drive out of the fog and into the sun when you go to Kings Mountain. But it's always such a special graduation, and for those of my board members who haven't had a chance to go, it's wonderful. The fourth and fifth grade teacher does a story about where all the children will be in 20 years and how their lives intersect, and all the fourth graders give speeches about the fifth graders, and then the fifth graders give their own speech. And when you have such a small school, you can do that kind of very intimate ceremony. So that was wonderful. And I am sorry, again, Raj, about missing Eidos, and also sad about you leaving there, but we'll still have you at Cunha, so that'll be good. And just want to say welcome to Leticia, and of course to our new superintendent who's not here yet, and goodbye to Crystal and to Joy and to Cesar. Good luck with everything in your next steps, and goodbye to Diane. And Jane, thank you so much for the last 4 years. We were lucky enough to have, I unfortunately missed her party. We had vacation plans, and so took her out to lunch today and had a chance to catch up and give her individual presents, and just to really tell her thank you for all of the things that she's done for this district. When we hired her, we were really looking for someone with that energy and can-do attitude, and she has not disappointed in that aspect. She would stay up late at night and come to us the next morning and say, I've got an idea for how we can solve this problem and how we can do this thing. And they were wonderful ideas. They had to do with expanding mental health programs, doing early college, and expanding the access of children to that 5th year of high school that could potentially bridge them, and really started some amazing things, and really helped to work with this community and rebuild that trust that we need in this community. So really, really appreciate all that you've done for us here for the last 4 years, and definitely for every child that you have been able to influence and lead and guide, and you get to go and say, hey, I'm a woman and I'm the boss, so that was also fun and great for our young female students. So thank you very much for everything that you've done. Really appreciate it, and look forward to hearing stories about your retirement and all the wonderful things you're going to do. So I'm sure. No, or on next story.
That'll make it even more fun, Jane.
Hear about your flowers you're planting.
Down Highway 1.
And the puppies you're training. Yeah. So congratulations and enjoy. And thank you.
Hi. I also got a chance to attend some of the graduations, and I was kind of touched. I didn't know I would be so touched, so it was kind of nice. So I really enjoyed it, and I had a few comments. Apparently I am not a germaphobe, because a few people said to me afterwards, did you go wash your hand right away after shaking all those hundreds of hands? And I said, no, I didn't even think about that. So apparently I'm not a germaphobe. So I really did enjoy that. So I thought that was great, and it was a great introduction to my first year on the board. So I love that. I also wanted to say goodbye to everyone. You guys are all I know. I just got here, so I'm getting, I was really happy for all the help you guys have given me and the welcome that you've given me. And Jane, thank you especially for being very, very patient with lots and lots of questions. So I'm sad to see you all go. But I know you guys are all moving on to other exciting things, so I'm happy for you in that regard. That's all I have.
'Tis the season. I also had the honor of participating in a number of 2 elementary school promotions. My first time in Granada, that was really super fun, and then seeing all the traditions that each of the schools has, and Freya mentioned the Kings Mountain one, and Granada is this cool thing where they do like little high fives on their way to the promotion ceremony, which was really fun, and year-end celebrations at Kings Mountain, as well as Hatch. And I'll just, reiterate what Mr. John Nazar said at his graduation with the high schoolers at Half Moon Bay High School. If the group of students sitting before us represents the future, then the earth will be in good hands. So I'll remember that, because I think that is the inspiring element of this time of year, where you see these kids move on in their milestones to go to Cunha or to go to the high schools or beyond. I think that's a really cool thing. So I also want to say a special thank you to Cesar Gaitan, sitting back there quietly in the audience. If I can have you come up for just a second, we have a little gift for you as well. It's also a succulent plant, although it's not as beautiful as the ones that Kimberly made, because I made it. But the point is the heart and the thought, right, that counts. We just want to thank you so much for all your leadership and your heart and your mind, and you put all into it for our students here, both at Hatch initially and at Farallon more recently. I think you make me very, very lucky to have you. So thank you so much. So just wanted to say that. That wasn't on. I think we got everybody else officially at the meetings, but just I think at this time, as we're welcoming new people and saying goodbye to old friends, it is bittersweet. We did have a really fun and well-attended meet and greet event for our new superintendent, Dr. McFetridge, Sean, we'll call him pretty much from here on in, at the Half Moon Bay Library. We did a really great showing of people from the community come and welcome him, as well as a special board meeting where we got to know each other better as well with him. And again, as we thank Jane and Crystal and Joy and everybody for their years of service here, and welcome our new team members, Leticia and others, to the team. James in his new role, I think it's kind of a bittersweet time, of course, and just makes me kind of reflect over the last several weeks on a lot of the things I've observed about these fantastic leaders, and that excite me about the leaders that are coming in terms of, again, coming back to the theme of the Half Moon Bay High School around kindness and the importance of practicing kindness not only to others, but starting with ourselves, as I think is a conduit to being kind to others, and how much that really permeates the culture of a school, a community, etc. Slowing down and getting the facts is part of that too, I think, in this world, and it's really easy to move really quickly where we have 5,000 devices pinging us and telling us, this, that, and the other at any point in time, but if we just kind of slow down and take the information in as it comes. Sometimes you have to wait for it more than we want to, like 10 seconds instead of 5. But usually the quality is a little bit better. That to me is something that I've observed also, especially with our analytical thinkers like Jane and others that really kind of look for kind of that process in terms of making decisions and so on to really do it in a systematic way. And also just really operating with a growth mindset that, we continuously improve. And once we get to the next level, we go for the next level. And along the way, and again, I come from pharmaceutical research, so experiments are not strange in my world, as I know Mary Beth's as well. So that idea that mistakes happen, you take risks, things don't always work out the way you want them to, but we learn, and we learn from that experience, and we're stronger for those experiences. We can work together and do that and move on. So just want to thank you for all the leadership in that regard. And I can't not put a plug in, Rick's not here, I don't think, but I can't not put a plug in for School Messenger, which soft launched today, and is just like, if you haven't checked out the school websites, oh my God, like, they look so good. They really look so good. It's like 2019 in our websites, all of them, and it's really exciting to see the professionalism that they reflect that has been there the whole time, that is going to now be more obvious to the rest of the community and beyond. Think about hiring, and think about recruiting students. It's all, it will reflect that professionalism that we have in our district, and just facilitates information sharing. So again, it looks so easy and clean and smooth when you just load up the website, and it looks so picture perfect with all these like happy kids, and it's such a huge effort to make that happen. So I just want to commend Joy and Jane and Rick and all and the principals and all the team members that worked really hard to make that happen, because I know it's not easy. So thank you for that. All right. So our student board member's not here, which brings us to our superintendent, Jane.
So I had the pleasure of attending 3 graduations, the Cunha promotion and the 2 high school graduations. And as always, they were just absolutely lovely. A couple of highlights for me was this is the first time at the Eidos graduation that scholarships were awarded. And there was about, I think, $9,000 worth of scholarships that went out that day to the Eidos graduates from Rotary and from CEF. So it's really phenomenal. Of course, we send out about $170,000 to the Half Moon Bay High School kids. So if you hear the combined generosity, we're up around 180 again between the two facilities. So it was really wonderful to see that and see the turnout that there is at that graduation. And then as Freya alluded to, yes, I heard about Building C in 2 of the 3, and it was actually kind of a joke when this horrid thing happened and we discovered it and we figured out we're going to have to close a major building at Cunha. And Dr. Reamer turned to me and he says, well, look at the bright side. You'll probably get it reopened in time for your retirement. Well, Cunha's opening this summer, you know, Kurt, thank you for the curse. So, I mean, it is thrilling to hear that take place. And of course, the high school ceremony, lovely, and all the ceremonies. You've heard me give the thanks and many, many times, and I keep staring at Freya, who was there when I was a very, very nervous, not superintendent, sitting out waiting for the interview and thinking, oh, what's going to happen? And they said, you have 35 minutes to do 12 questions. And then I did the first question, and from behind me were the 2 consultants saying, you're a little slow on time. And so it all worked out well, because here I am, and the opportunity of a lifetime and the privilege of a lifetime. And one of the very first hires I made is a young man that's out there as the principal of Half Moon Bay High School, Mr. John Nazar. And so there was a very nervous me, because I wasn't quite here yet, and Tony Rorick was letting me, the prior superintendent, sort of sit in and make the call. And there was a very nervous John Nazar. And I'm going to give secrets of Mr. Nazar now so you can use these accordingly. When John gets nervous, he talks a lot. And it was really, I'm like, who is this guy? And can he come to a point? And well, he's kind of nervous. We did a couple of extra interviews. And finally, we get John alone. And then the John Nazar that everybody knows comes out. Oh, okay, we can hire him. He's going to be great. And of course he is. It has nothing to do with me. But in my closing comment, I'm going to quote John Nazar and my response to him for all of his advice. Work hard, not a chance, John, I'm retiring. Be kind forever and always. And I'm going to have a great day. Thanks, John, for all the support. Thank you, principals, for everything that you have done. It's been a blast.
Jane. All right, seems funny to move on to consent items after that. But here we are, item 14. Item 14, we did at least have cake, so that's good. Yeah, consent items, item 14. Do we have a motion to approve? Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 3-0. So item 15, action items. 15A, approve adoption of the 2019 to 2020 Local Control Accountability Plan. Joy.
So this evening, we are bringing forth to you for approval the Local Control Accountability Plan. We've reported on it several times, and we presented the plan in its entirety to you at the last board meeting. Just to point out, there is an additional attachment, which is the Local Control Accountability Plan Budget Overview, which is also necessary to include with the final with the final plan approval.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, passes 3-0. So item 15B, which is the addendum that Joy referenced.
Yes. So this is the Local Control Accountability Plan Federal Addendum, which is added to our Local Control Accountability Plan to address how we are spending our title funds. And we bring it to you also for the approval.
Do we have a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 3-0 as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thanks, Joy. Okay, 15C, approve adoption of the 2019 to 2020 district budget. Crystal.
Yes, thank you. So, a few weeks ago, I presented the budget for 1920 and then projections for the 2 out years. So tonight, it is brought before you for approval. But before I ask for your approval on that, I definitely can't go out without speaking my truth about how schools are funded. So just to kind of provide you some context of what the California budget is doing for schools. So we're constantly battling this message that schools are fully funded, or look at all these great added revenue that the state is bringing in, and the governor is increasing funding for schools. And I just think it's important to put that into context. Yes, there is, the total overall California budget for schools has gone up to 45%. That sounds great, but what that actually means for Cabrillo is not great. We'll take every penny, but when we're trying to get parcel taxes approved and really kind of generate some of our local revenue, and we hear on the news that the local control funding formula is receiving an additional just under $2 billion. That sounds like a lot of money that districts are getting, and there are a lot of districts in California, so that's divided up, and then it's also shared amongst what your enrollment is, and then that additional $2 billion really equates to 3.26 in COLA, right? So that's the cost of living increase adjustment that we are taxed with using to pay for mandates. So there's no new funding. It's still a negative growth because our mandates equal more than what the growth is. So I think it's really important to remember that. And that, moving forward, they're noting that the COLA exceeds the growth in the minimum guarantee, which it sounds great, again, but what that actually means for Cabrillo is very little new money with rising expenditures. And then also, to kind of just touch base on, so there is some additional funding going into special ed. I don't really know what that's going to do for Cabrillo yet. I think it will provide, obviously any relief is definitely welcomed, but the way that they talk about it is the increase to that funding mechanism is just to create a statewide base rate. So this, these programs have consistently been underfunded for decades and decades, and so just bringing them up now, districts still are carrying the weight of these added expenses, so there still needs to be a lot of improvement. And then finally, with the pension obligations, so there is some savings. When you hear about how much is going towards that, it's $2.2 billion. That sounds like a ton of money. And in 1920 for Cabrillo, that's $161,000. Our total pension payment for 1920 is $2.6 million. So when you look at $161,000 when we're paying $2.6 million, again, thank you, but we need more. And then in 2021, our pension liability for just our teachers alone is just under $3 million. And that's $111,000 of relief with these current numbers. So again, with these minor pension savings, when we're already on the other side of the bell curve, and the districts have really had to carry the weight of those increases, it's just ever more important that AB 39 gets funded, and we actually can start to make a difference in the direction that we're funding our schools. So I ask that you, with all of that in consideration, I do ask for your approval of the 1920 budget.
Do we have a motion to approve? A second? I just want to make one comment before we go to vote, which is just to be clear, if we vote aye, we don't necessarily like this budget, but we realize for all the reasons that you have so eloquently stated, Crystal, that this is the situation that we're in, and we appreciate your leadership and Jane's leadership and collaboration with leaders across the district and community to really figure out how do we make the most, how do we squeeze the most out of the pennies that we have to, again, serve all our kids, make their dreams come true to the extent that we can, and knowing all the challenges and range of services that we provide that weren't provided 30 years ago even, and the costs that weren't what they were even 5 years ago. The fact that we could do that and achieve what we are achieving with this second highest ranked high school in the county, for example, and much more beyond that, I think is really phenomenal, a testament to the district and the community. So I just wanted to add that comment to yours, Crystal. So unless there are other comments or questions, we'll go to en masse vote. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 3-0. Thanks, Crystal. Okay, 15D, adopt resolution number 1119, authorizing the district to spend funds received in the 2018 to 2019 from the education protection account in accordance with Article 13, Section 36 of the California Constitution. Crystal.
So I think this one also is important to bring some truth or remind the truth that goes around Prop 30. So Prop 30 is the Local Public Safety Protection Act of 2012. So it provides districts with an additional funding source, or that was the purpose of the additional funding source. However, it's only additional if you're a basic aid or community funded district, where it sits outside of your actual property taxes that fund your district. For districts that are state funded, as I have mentioned before, we will never receive over our bucket. So this money, even though we have to pass a resolution and we have to account for how the dollars are spent, it again just reaches to the top of our bucket. So it's a formula-driven amount of 2.7, which sounds like great, but it's just not in addition. It would be lovely if that was in addition to what we get. So this is basically a housekeeping resolution that I ask you to pass.
Do we have a motion to approve? So moved. Second? Second. Unless there are comments or questions, we'll go to roll call vote since this is a resolution. Sarfrea? Aye. Aye. Passes 3-0. Thanks, Crystal. Okay, 15E, adopt resolution number 1219 to designate authorized representatives of Cabrillo Unified School District as signatories effective July 1st, 2019.
This is me.
You also?
Yes. So, as the times change and the sun sets and the sunrise begins, I still think I should be allowed to keep my signatory authority so I can keep everybody in line, but somehow the rules they're not written that way. This is a resolution to approve some signatory changes. This is so that the district can maintain operations and kind of move forward. We require 2 signatures on all financial documents, so that's our checks, both cut at the county that are audited, purchasing agreements and so forth. That's attached to the diagram behind the resolution. So this will be brought back to you again in August. That will have the new assistant soup's name and then some changes. So this is definitely important to keep us up and running over the summer.
All right. We have a motion to approve? Second? Second. Okay, questions or comments? We'll move to also roll call vote for this resolution. Aye. Passes 3-0. Okay, 15F, adopt resolution number 1319, supporting award of leaseback agreements for the Building D roof project and authorization to enter facilities lease and site lease by and between Cabrillo Unified School District and Block Construction Company.
So last month, you approved the GMP, and my apologies, this resolution should have been submitted at the same time as that GMP, so it's a little bit of cleanup and formalities for this resolution.
Great. Do we have a motion to approve? So moved. Second? Second. Okay, questions or comments? Proceed to roll call vote. Aye. 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 Passes 3-0. 15G,
So again, as mentioned in the construction update that was provided to you earlier, I asked for your approval for the lighting project for the high school track that will be completed over this summer as well.
Very good. Motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye, passes 3-0. Okay, 15H, approve Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board policy updates and adopt the proposed revisions as recommended by the California School Boards Association. Jane?
Yes, my last set of board updates. And so 2 of these are actually recommended by the California School Boards, and the third is because of a financing mechanism that this district uses. So I will go through them briefly for you. The first of them talks about grants, gifts, grants, and bequests. It adds new, this is CSBA authorized, this is how to handle crowdfunding, and this is becoming a mechanism that many school districts are using to fund, and so there needed to be some clarification of how you use it vis-a-vis a school district, and that's what these guidelines do. The second is district residency. This one coming in line with the California laws that are contrary to the national laws, yeah, go California, which said we will not ask about immigration status as we register our students into our schools. If you live here, you go to school here. Good for California. And the final one, which is conflict of interest, because we use lease-back mechanisms on some of our construction projects, it was necessary to have some clear language in our conflict of interest paragraphs that make it clear on how exactly we handle lease-back and how we don't have conflict of interest there as well. So this is prepared by our counsel, Dennis Wolver and Kelly, to allow us to continue to use this mechanism. And that's it.
Do we have a motion to approve? So moved. Second? Okay, do we comments or questions? Usually these all look good. So. All right, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Passes 3-0. All right, thank you, Jane. All right, so number 16, future board agenda items, approve the CUSD governing board policy updates and adopt the proposed revisions as recommended by the CSBA, approve William Uniform complaint report. Item 17, future events, dates, and requests. I'll just add to this list special board meetings that have been confirmed since the publication of this packet, which are August 4th, we'll have a CSB Good Beginnings workshop with the board and our new superintendent. August 5th will be the financial planning workshop we referred to earlier, special board meeting. And then August 8th, at this point, maybe, unless it's rescheduled because of the earlier conversation of decision-making, regular governing board meeting, district office board. We will not return to closed session, so we will adjourn. Thank you, everybody.